Good morning, I'm Wayworn Worm, and welcome to my channel. And welcome back to Spaces Wide and Good Friends Are Too Few, Episode 10, The Great Endeavor. The next few months were nothing short of miraculous. The Great Endeavor, as it would later be called, was an effort by every human who could, working together, united in a single purpose for the first time in history. The first part of the endeavor was to jumpstart the nascent trans-Newtonian missile program that the Earth Federation had been slowly working on. Missile engines were created from scratch, improvements were made to warheads, small maneuvering thrusters that worked on Sorium were developed. Space station-mounted missile launchers were developed from scratch to fire the missiles that were being created. There were two kinds. One was an anti-ship missile, and the second was an anti-missile missile. Large sensors were also developed, and due to their great size, it was decided that they would continue the now proven to be flawed strategy of placing them on one class of defense platform rather than all classes. This was not because they had not learned from their earlier mistake, but because the sensors were just so large and everything was so well planned that they could not find a room without delaying the updating of all defense platforms by up to several months, if not years. The defense platforms that carried the sensors were given two quad laser turrets that could work excellently as anti-ship lasers. Earth Federation technology was just not up to the task of making workable anti-missile lasers with the speeds observed by the People's Republic of Anarch Zeta's missiles. The original plan was to have these platforms continue their orbits of Earth and protect Earth with the downside of having the entire rest of the Sol system as uncontested space for the Anarch Zeta aliens to play around in at their will. Although that plan was seen as extremely undesirable, it was feared that there would be no other option with current technology. In the end, there was some hope as some brilliant engineers and the brave remaining crews of the Earth Federation Space Navy figured out a makeshift way to drag the defense platforms to about 20 million kilometers from the jump point to Ross 128, newly renamed Anarch Zeta. The platforms were designed to be able to operate by themselves for 300 months. And given the technological capabilities and speed of most breakthroughs of the Earth Federation, it was fairly likely that it would be all 300 months before they could be rotated for shore leave. In a show of defiance to the Anarch Zeta aliens, the replacements for the lost ships were given the same names as the ships they were replacing. Humanity would not be cowed by aliens. Not on this day. Not ever. On June 1st, 2102, an Amazon-class ship jumped into Sol space. Earth Defense Platform 001 would target it with a single firing computer and shoot one volley at the ship. It would take 20 seconds for the missiles to fire. This delay was noted for future study and consideration. The Earth Defense Missiles Mark II would take roughly 22 minutes to reach the Amazon, assuming it didn't move. It was moving by the time the missiles headed toward it, but they were moving almost 10 times as fast as it was. The Amazon was apparently heading towards 2004 TY-364, an asteroid not too far from the jump point. The 10 missiles were overkill. Later telemetry would show that 3 were sufficient to destroy the ship. This would also be noted for future study and consideration. Around the same time that the small fight with the Amazon happened, the Cambrai finally limped into Earth orbit and began to be repaired by Swyatech shipyard, and the full impact of the damage was finally seen. It would take almost 4 months to repair the ship. It was almost completely destroyed by the railguns. It was agreed that the ship was lucky to have survived, and Captain Noel Prunier would be decorated for his actions that led to one of the captains of the Navy surviving. Rear Admiral Upper Half Lily McQuay walked briskly down the halls of the presidential offices. She was trying very hard to keep her feelings masked behind a somber look as the echoes of her footfalls cascaded through the empty halls. It was midnight on New Year's 2103. She should be at home, celebrating with her family, not here in an empty wing of an almost completely empty building. But no, that couldn't be done. President Marjorie Stoeller had to have her update on the situation at the edge of the solar system, and she had to have it as the first thing of 2103. And for some reason, that was out of Rear Admiral McQuay's comprehension. First thing of 2103 apparently meant at midnight, January 1st. She made it to the doors marking the president's office and stood at attention before the door just as the clock she could hear in the distance started chiming off the hour. She then stood there in front of the closed doors in an empty hallway for a few moments before the doors finished assessing who she was and opened for her. As she looked into the office of President Stoeller, she was again annoyed at it. The room was much larger than it needed to be, and it was opulent in every way the builders and decorators could think of. There was an almost comically large fireplace that was merrily burning away. There were multiple seating areas that Lily had no recollection of anyone ever using, and she had yet to meet a person who could. Then, at the far end of this overly long room, sat President Stoeller behind her overly large desk, waiting for her. Lily started the march across the office, keeping herself at attention the entire time. This was the only person alive that Lily was second in rank to, and by the gods, she would make that fact as uncomfortable for whoever sat behind that desk as she could. Finally, she reached the desk and sat in one of the chairs in front of it, never wavering from attention. "You summoned me, Mrs. President?" she said simply once she was seated. Marjorie nodded and smiled thinly. "Yes, I want an update on the situation with the aliens." Task Group Cambrai sits at half strength, but the task group is made up of trained veterans ready to see battle whenever needed. Given that the Cambrai survived, the task group is also capable of full independent operations and should be considered as a full asset. The task group Canai sits at 1/4 strength, containing only the Abyss. Given that the Abyss is an Essex-class cruiser with no Lexington-class jump cruiser available, the Abyss is not capable of full independent operations and should be considered a half-asset at best. However, it is also full of veterans and can fully operate with the aid of the Cambrai. The Gross Closer Dockyard and Engineering Works are now working on 2 Essex-class ships, the Acheron and the Ariel, and will be finished on the 14th of September next year. Also, they're working on adding another slip to work on 3 ships instead of the 2 they are currently at, and will finish the current slip on 4th of February 2105. The Swiatek shipyard is working on 2 Lexington-class ships, the Bunker Hill, which will finish on the 6th of March 2104, and the Canai, which will be done on the 24th of October of the same year. There was one minor intrusion from the Anarch Zeta back in June, but since then the defense platforms have reported no activity. Given their positioning to the jump point, they could detect anything 50 tons and larger for over 48 million kilometers around the jump point. They are also positioned relative to the jump point about 1/3 of their range away in order to see the small missiles about halfway between the jump point and the defense platforms. The distance we can see the smallest missiles was deemed too close by far to place them. Marjorie nodded again. "Good. What are you going to do with the new ships as they leave space dock? Lily had been overseeing the much reduced fleet strength for a while now, so she could answer without even glancing at her notes. The Acheron and the Ariel will join Task Group Cambrai and immediately start Task Group trials to get the Green Sailors up to speed as much as possible. The Bunker Hill will be given to Captain Bradley Zenner, recently knighted, as the most decorated commanding officer we have and the most battle-hardened officer we have. The ship currently under his command, the Abyss, will be taken out of Task Group Cambrai and put in Task Group Bunker Hill, making the Task Group Cannae an on-paper designation only for a few months, while making the Bunker Hill a half-strength task group. Military technology is continuing along. We are working on improving the reload rate of our missile launchers and improving the precision of our beam fire controls so we can lengthen the effective range of our lasers. All of our engagements so far have happened at either extreme close range, in which range the Anarch Zeta aliens have a large weight of fire advantage on us, or at extreme long ranges, which we struggle with due to a lack of missiles until very recently. I see. We're continuing to build up our industrial base as the population continues to recover after the tragedy that was the first half of the last century. In early October, I'm sure we can spare enough construction factories to build a few more research facilities to aid in technological research of all kinds, which will, no doubt, also include military research, President Stellar said, measuring each word carefully before she said it. It was really the most infuriating thing about the president. She was so averse to risk that, in Lily's opinion at least, she ended up putting the Earth at greater risk. No matter. Her term was almost halfway over, and in a year the elections would begin. Lily hoped that President Stellar would be a single-term president. And those thoughts were only partially stemming from the fact that it was midnight on New Year's Day and Lily was not with her family. Thank you so much for listening to episode 10 of Space is Wide and Good Friends Are Too Few. Make sure to tune in tomorrow for the next episode of A Monster Manual Backward. Thank you.